What's up YouTube, Capital G here, letting you guys know what the heck happened at YCS Chicago, Illinois. As usual, I spent a good portion of my weekend reading up on the coverage so that you didn't have to. It was such a shame that Konami decided not to live stream this event because all accounts say, from what I've seen and read and heard, that this was without a doubt, guys, one of the most entertaining YCSs that we have had in years. And keep in mind that that includes the fact that we have had in the last calendar year these crazy rogue decks like Prank Kids and World Chalice come pretty much out of nowhere to shock the world and win the entire shebang. And it has happened once again. A rogue deck has come just out of nowhere and taken the crown from the meta. Of course, we'll talk about that a little later in the video when we get to the top 32 breakdown and further, but let's go ahead. As always, I like to start with the attendance at the event. Looks like our attendance came in at 1566, which is legitimate. We're hitting almost the 1600 mark. Now, one thing to note here, especially for those of you guys who live outside of the United States of America, Chicago, where this event was held, has seen record lows when it comes to the temperatures. I'm talking about the weather. Like, the temperatures were so low in Chicago over the last week or so, like it was actually dangerous. Flights were being canceled in and out of Chicago. No mail was being delivered. It was absolutely a nightmare, like the lowest temperatures they've seen in the history of the city. And because of that, I do feel like the attendance was affected. I saw numerous accounts of people online saying that their flights were canceled so that they couldn't actually end up going to Chicago. They were getting refunds on their tickets, but obviously they wanted to go to the event. So I feel like because of the weather, maybe we ended up missing out on maybe 150 players who probably did not get to go to the event, but would have actually been planning on going to the event. So that's unfortunate, but the attendance was still very legitimate. Now, when it comes to the top 32, I personally found this to be kind of a tale of two stories, right? I feel like on one side, it was incredibly shocking because there were certain decks in the top 32 that I just would not have expected. Also, there was a huge omission here that, I thought was honestly a mistake until I had to go ahead and fact check this and research it. When you look at some of the decks that you're like, wait a minute, Cap, LUNALIGHTS made it into the top 32? You're seeing Orcus in the top 32. Keep in mind that this is an Orcus build before Dark Neostorm, where obviously it becomes one of the best decks in the entire meta. No Dark Neostorm, no problem. We saw ABCs make it into the top 32. Shout outs to Calvin Tahan. I'll talk about that a little later. We also saw Subterrors. A lot of people were saying Guru Control was not going to be a real deck. Cap G, you're overhyping it. It's not good. Two players actually piloted Guru Control to the top 32, guys, so it is a legitimate deck. And we saw Crusadia as well. If I had to take a best guess when it comes to Crusadia, I would probably say that this is going to be, or that these were probably builds that involve the Guard Dragons as well. Obviously, Crusadia can OTK like nobody's business going second. They can break boards, but I feel like when you can go first and set up those Guard Dragon negates, it gives you another way of playing the Crusadia deck. But the big omission here, and you guys probably noticed it immediately, there were 0 Altergeist players in the top 32, which I personally thought was insane. You're talking about Altergeist, a deck that just a few weeks ago looked incredibly dominant at YCS Sydney. A lot of people predicted Altergeist to be a top 3 deck going into this format, maybe even the best deck. I had it as the #1 slot, and for it to have, it have no hits on the ban list and then come out and do absolutely nothing at the first YCS of this format, I think that kind of speaks volumes. Maybe Guru Control is the best control deck of the format. I don't know. Now, when it comes to the decks that we predicted, or really the predictable side of the top 32, you're looking at 64% being Sky Striker and Thunder Dragons combined. They each respectively had 10 decks in the top 32. So you're seeing a lot of carryover from the last format. A lot of the best decks from last formats are still the best decks now. Sky Strikers received no nerfs in any way, so it was expected for them to have a strong showing. Same thing goes with Thunder Dragons. Yes, they did get cards like Soul Charge and Fairy Tale Snow, and they lost Brilliant Fusion, so they don't even run that anymore. But I said with, Aloof Lapine and plus other cards, people are running some dragons in there. Like, Thunder Dragons have access to so many kind of chaos-oriented cards. It was inevitable that they would be able to essentially adapt. I said that Thunder Dragons adapted better than any deck last formats, and I think that you're just kind of seeing that. And plus, it seems to be the choice of the best players in the game right now. Now, one interesting thing As you jump ahead to the top 8, you notice that the Sky Striker players just almost evaporates. You had 10 Sky Striker players in the top 32, but when you go to the top 8, there's only 1. And you see Thunder Dragon still has 3, so it's really interesting of a dynamic because so many people were saying, you know, Sky Strikers needed to get hit. There were other people like myself saying, no, I really don't think it needs to get hit because at the highest level, it's not really performing that well. Sky Strikers have not been a legitimate threat to win a YCS, in my opinion, for 3 YCSs in a row now. They're not making it to the finals. They seem to be doing extremely poorly when it comes to the top cuts. They're getting there definitely, but they're not doing well when they get to the top cuts. And when they seem to be playing Thunder Dragons head to head, they're getting fucking obliterated from what I can see. Now, one interesting thing, or actually 2 interesting things. Number 1, we did see Calvin Tahan pilot ABCs all the way to the semifinals. He actually was on Facebook talking about how he'd never get caught dead playing ABCs again. This was after A Assault Corps got taken off the ban list or taken from the limited list. I think it was a ruse. I think that he wanted people to believe that ABC sucked. I feel like he had a list the entire time, that he was just waiting for the right event. He knew ABCs were still amazing, and then he showed the entire world. But guys, we got to talk about the biggest story of the entire event, and that is that LUNALIGHTS won YCS Chicago. I could not be more proud. Obviously, I'm the Salem ambassador, guys, but if you guys don't know, I love LUNALIGHTS so much. Leo Dancer is my favorite card in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! I think I have about 7 Leo Dancers in 3 different languages and multiple rarities. I even bought an ultimate rare OCG Leo Dancer because I was like, whoa, I gotta have one of those. LUNALIGHTS ended up winning the entire event, and if your pilot right here, Raphael Nevin, looks a little familiar as he does right here, this is him a couple of years ago. He actually won a YCS previous to this a couple of years ago, YCS Prague with Spiral. So I think it's cool because it tells you that, you know, he's a duelist who's been around the block. He's like, you know, a top flight player. He obviously did not luck into this. Here's his deck list right here. He did run Dangers and LUNALIGHTS, but it was incredible, especially for those of you guys who really want to know how the LUNALIGHT deck works. And I've shown off some of the combos that you can pull off with the deck. Please read this top 16 match. It was phenomenal. I mean, obviously, you know, he won because, you know, he won the entire event, but it shows you the power of LUNALIGHTS. In his first duel, he has 2 cards ripped from his hand, and he still ends up OTKing Thunder Dragons. He summons Leo Dancer, uses Underclock Taker, and there's a reason why I say that Leo Dancer is still the baddest bitch in Yu-Gi-Oh, man. Like, she's going, if you summon her with Underclock Taker, like, sorry, I don't care what your opponent has, like, they're getting OTK'd. That's a fact. Game 2, his opponent says you go first, and he ends up just making Azathoth, Rusty Bardiche, and he, you know, his opponent obviously doesn't get to play any Yu-Gi-Oh, and it's crazy that, you know, LUNALIGHTS are, they're one of the decks that can obviously benefit from playing Dangerous, but at the same time, they're also one of these dark decks that get access to Rusty Bardiche. It's interesting because I said this a couple of videos ago, LUNALIGHTS aren't really so much fusion focused right now. I mean, they're very similar to Burning Abyss in the sense that they kind of just evolved with Master Rule 4. They now have the ability with Yellow Martin. I talked about how this plus the interaction with Tiger was going to be stupid because of these 2 cards where you just, I mean, you kind of get 3 to 4 monsters sometimes at best, especially if you are running Zephyros the Elite, and you can get it into the graveyard with Foolish Burial. Like, this is a deck that can link summon a lot of monsters, and it does have the access still to fusion summon with LUNALIGHT Wolf, so you can drop Leo Dancer as he did, but it's a deck that actually blinds second. He blinded seconds in that feature match. He was basically blinding second in every duel. He was either breaking boards with Kaijus or Prankatrops, and even if your opponent does have the Azathoth, you can still kaiju them because you get player priority in the main phase. So you can either Prankatrops them, you special it, they try to activate the rank up spell, you just, you know, pop their card so they don't actually resolve it, or you can kaiju them and you can just kind of wreck them. And if you stop that, you're always going to kind of OTK them. And one of the themes at this event was players actually blinding seconds and saying, you can make whatever board that you want. I'm not going to play any hand traps. I'm just going to blind seconds. I'm going to break your board and I'm going to OTK you. You guys see see a deception here with his Orcus build. It was kind of an Orcus danger variant, and look at some of the cards he ran. He ran 4 Kaijus, 3 Denko Sekis, and then 3 Fantastic Dragons, and I was like, is this his side deck? This is his actual freaking main deck. He was main decking these cards to basically be able to beat the other decks that dropped Azathoth, but at the same time, he can drop Azathoth himself. Like, it's actually amazing how different, or how, you know, different this format appears to be so far, because you guys know last format with things like Rongo and Soul Charge, you always wanted to go first, but now you have players who are just straight up blinding going second. So I think that that is really interesting. We saw one of the kings of Yu-Gi tubing himself, Alexander Simo, have a feature match. Unfortunately, he didn't quite get enough to, you know, take the victory, but it was still a really good and interesting duel if you guys want to see. Simo was playing Sky Striker Trickstar, or Trickstar Sky Striker, which I definitely would not have expected. I mean, I don't know what deck I would have put Simo on, but it probably would not have been this. I guess I would have just assumed he was going to play a pure version of Sky Striker. I don't think that I've ever really seen him play Altergeist or anything like that. So that is interesting that the homie Simo did almost make it into the top 32. If he did win this match, he actually would have made top 32, because his opponent who played Cyber Dragons did make top 32. Last thing I want to talk about is some things happening in the secondary market. Poor Lunalight Fusion, already over doubled in price because these freaking rare hunters ain't stopping, guys. Buyouts already happening. It was actually more expensive just a couple of hours ago. It was like $14. It's a really bad buyout because Raphael doesn't even run it in his extra deck. As I've said before, the Lunalight deck is not really super fusion based right now. I mean, yes, you can summon Leo Dancer, but you're mainly just going to summon it off Tiger. They're not running the Lunalight Fusion and the best version of Lunalight, so this is actually a really bad buyout because it's not a card that if you want to run Lunalights, you actually need, like, you're not going to be running the card. The Danger monsters are also up, and, you know, Danger Sneck was already kind of going towards 50. Now it just seems to be going a little higher. Danger Nessie is like reaching that $60 point. These cards I don't really think are going to go down in price anytime soon. You see Danger Nessie's average price used to be like around $44. It was a card that was consistently under $45, but now it's like a $60 card. I think that people just realize until these cards get hit, there's just so many decks in Yu-Gi-Oh that you're going to be able to run them in. So I think that the Danger cards are going to stay up in price until, you know, we end up seeing them get touched on the ban list. Whether or not, you know, there are other good link monsters in the game, these cards just facilitate things like Rusty Bardiche, and if you run them in dark decks, it's obviously better. You know, we have Salamandrates coming up, which will run the Danger monsters as well, or can run them. We have even more Orcus cards, which are just going to obviously double down on the use of Danger. So, you know, Danger cards are just going to be expensive for the foreseeable future. But what did you guys think of YCS Chicago? What was your biggest takeaway from this event? Was it the continued dominance of Thunder Dragons and Sky Striker? Was it Lunalights coming out of nowhere as a rogue deck to win this event? Was it the other kind of crazy decks in the top 32? Was it the absence of Altergeist altogether, despite the fact that it's still full power? Was it players going second and saying, nah, you go first, I'll just OTK you with freaking Leo Dancer? Anyways, leave it in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already, and turn on that notification bell for daily videos.